Hello and welcome to today's episode of Rainer on Leadership, your online home for leadership lessons and advice for the local church. I am your co-host, Sam Rainer, and the only reason I did that intro, for those of you who have been listening for a very long time, you recognize that is Jonathan Howe. I do not have the voice. Jonathan used to be the co-host of this show. I just talked with him on the telefono. We hadn't caught up in a while, but Jonathan's not on the show. We'll have to get him back sometime. We've got Matt McCraw on the show. Welcome, Matt.
I'm glad to be here, and I concur. Jonathan is a great guy.
He has a better voice than you.
Indeed.
But anyway, Jonathan's doing great, and we mentioned him in several episodes back, and his wife was listening and then texted him, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to start listening more if you guys are going to talk about me. So, Jonathan, we are talking about you. Jonathan's doing well, by the way. He's doing very, very well. Happy for him. Certainly miss him on the show. But we've got a good show today. We're talking about weekly church attendance patterns by generation and the changes that we're seeing really in the last 8 years or so. Some fascinating data to share with you. But before we do, certainly want to thank our sponsor, Upward. Upward Sports is the best at what they do. They've got running. There is this Upward running program that you have to check out. This is your church's next step in your outreach program. You can offer a 5K challenge. They've got tailored training plans to help runners or walkers. So this could be a way to introduce some people to some physical activity. You don't need to be an expert runner to handle all this. They've got a Run Club app, which is phenomenal. Fully customized program to fit your church's timeline. They've got it all. So really, you just need to reach out to them. We talk about Upward a lot because it's an awesome way to do outreach. They've got pickleball. They've got soccer and, different things they're known for. But this is new. So upward.org/runcoach. RUNCOACH, upward.org/runcoach. Upward is here for you. They're here for your church. They can help you do outreach, which gets us really into the subject matter. Matt, do you see in your own church, just anecdotally, any sort of generational attendance patterns? Do older people come more? I mean, what do you see at ground level in your world?
Yeah, I think the oldest generation in our church, those who are still able to come physically, are by far the most faithful as a group in their attendance. Those who are physically able and are oldest, I think it's just a regular part of their lives. Once we get down into the younger groups, it really just varies in our church, but definitely the most dependable. If somebody is missing and I say, where's so-and-so today? How come they're not here? It's usually a senior adult.
Yeah, I don't know for my church. I was kind of giving it some thought, just right before we went on air. I would say that Gen X tends to be pretty stable, probably the most frequent in our church. Boomers travel some to see kids or grandkids or whatever. The silent generation, their parents tend to have health issues. They don't come. The elderly at my church, they would love to be there, but a lot of times health issues keep them home. But Gen X, for the most part, still working, not traveling as much, not retired. So they're in those weekly rhythms and patterns. And that's a good idea for a study when it comes to, faithfulness in church in generations. But we do have the data. So let me just share the data here. And I think this is absolutely fascinating. So you see some trends. A lot of this description will be in the show notes, by the way. So if you're like, man, I want to write some of this down, we've written it down for you. So just go to churchanswers.com, check the show notes, or you can, if you're watching on YouTube, should be right below you. But here's the data. So weekly church attendance trends from 2016 to 2024. So this is a short window. This is not, last 30 or 40 years. This is really since 2016. So this includes the pandemic. Don't forget that. This is a pre-pandemic number and a post-pandemic number. So boomers went from 27% to 28%. So increased a little bit in church attendance. Gen X went from 24 to 22, so a slight decline. Millennials, who were at 26%, more than Gen X, now matches Gen X at 22. They went from 26 to 22. And then Gen Z, which everyone was for a while talking about, maybe there's a revival among Gen Z. Maybe this generation will be coming back to church more. Well, they went from 29%, which was the highest, to 24%. So they've seen a drop as well, but that's the sharpest decline too, which is what you would expect as Gen Z gets older. A lot of them, as previous generations have done, fade from church. Hopefully we can stop that fade. There's still a lot of good potential there. But as Ryan Burge has noted, that great revival among Gen Z is not coming to fruition in the way that a lot of people had hoped. There's an article, by the way, that we got some of this data from. It is from Ryan Burge. The plateau is real, is what he says. That's his particular take. So you can click the link to see his research. We put that in the show notes too. Matt, what do you say? What do you think? Does this make sense to you? Is this? I mean, is this what you see? Is this what you feel? Is this what you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think our church is maybe similar to yours. That older generation, which I was speaking about, would be the silent generation. We do see some boomers who travel a lot. Grandkids are a big reason there. So I'm a little surprised that the boomers increased. And I think in our church, we not only have a good attendance from some Gen Xers as well, but also people like the two of us, geriatric millennials. And so we have some good attendance from geriatric millennials in our church as well. So
I might as well be Gen X because I missed it by like 2 months. And some people put me in Gen X as like the absolute youngest Gen Xer.
Yeah.
Because I was born in 1980, and then others they start the millennials at 81. Others start millennials at 80. I prefer 80. And so here's something about generations. I had younger brothers. So if you are the oldest, if you're right there on the line, and you have younger siblings, you tend to be pulled more into the younger generation. If I had been the youngest in my family and still born in 1980, I might act and feel more like a Gen Xer because I would have had older siblings. So nobody cares about my birth year, and I can't really do anything about it, but I'm right there on the line. So thank you for calling me geriatric. That's my point.
You're welcome. I'm right there with you. I'm a couple years behind you, but still classified as a geriatric millennial.
So what are the implications of this, Matt? What does this mean? So there has been a slight decline overall, but boomers are also, and Gen Z seeing the sharpest decline, but then boomers up slightly. So piece this together for me. What might be the implications for your church?
Yeah, I think these are some of the implications are things that we've already recognized since the pandemic, and that is that attendance frequency is not what it was. And so, we see a decline again, except for the boomers, we see a decline in each of these age groups. So I think we just have to be very intentional about reaching out to those who are already a part of our church family, in addition to obviously doing outreach and evagelism in our communities. And so, Sam, you've actually said a lot of good stuff about this in the past, written some articles about attendance frequency and things like that. But, I found in my church, one of the greatest methods of reaching our church family are old school methods of contact work and reaching out. And so I think there are some implications for us to think about. We have to be intentional, and we have to also remember what has worked historically, and will that work again? And of course, are there some new things we need to do as well to reach these that aren't attending as much as they once did?
Yeah, something we've talked about a lot on the show is attendance frequency. And, I've often walked people through the numerical example. You've got 400 people coming 4 out of 4 weeks. Your average weekly attendance is 400. But they take the same 400 people and they come every other week. Your average weekly attendance is 200. And a lot of pastors really struggle with that because, where is everybody? That's like don't say that. If you're listening and you're a lay person, listen, we love you. Your pastor loves you. And, I'm sure you're extraordinarily valuable to your church. Don't say that on a Sunday morning. There's nothing more discouraging. It's like, I don't know where they are. That's your job. They are your friends. Why don't you go find them and bring them to church? But I get what people are saying because, hey, we used to be twice the size, right? But we still have the same amount of people. So you're still shepherding them. They're still calling you. They're still texting you. Still got to go to the hospital, do the funerals, do the weddings. Got to be there for the family. But it feels like the church is half the size while the pastor's still just as worked as ever, if not more worked. Well, what's doing that? What's causing that? Why do you feel like I'm doing more work than ever, but people are thinking that we're smaller as a church? Well, it's because of attendance frequency. And so and this is the number one numerical reason why churches decline. We could talk about all sorts of spiritual reasons why churches decline, but this is the number one numerical reason why churches decline. Well, it could also be the number one numerical reason why your church grows, right? Let's get people here more often. Matt, are you doing anything to increase attendance frequency at your church?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, and I think I actually learned this from, I was encouraged, I already knew to do this, but I was encouraged to do this back when I used to listen to EST with you and Josh King. And
which is now here at Rainer on Leadership.
Absolutely.
We've had a marriage.
Yes, we're all coming together. It's so wonderful. But for our pastors, for example, we have to turn in a contact report every week of number of handwritten cards, number of phone calls, and number of text messages. Every single week we do that, and we hold each other accountable to that. It's just this idea of identifying people who are maybe missing, or we also try to encourage those who are coming regularly, that we're grateful and we notice that, and we're grateful for their investment in our church in different ways. And so we do that on both ends, because not only should you try to reach those who are not as frequent, but you should thank and encourage those who are involved in the church. And so that's one of the things that we do, is we try to identify patterns. We talk about in staff meeting, hey, has anybody seen so-and-so? Haven't seen them. Anybody know where they are? And we just try to keep those communication lines open and try to be intentional in reaching those who aren't here.
Those intentional connection points are really, I'm glad you brought that up, because they seem to be universal across all generations, with some mild exceptions here. So so every person we pray for as a team, as a staff at our staff chapel, we actually write a handwritten note. We all sign it. If whoever was praying in that meeting, we all sign that card. We send it to that person. It doesn't matter what age they are, 80 or 8. It doesn't matter. You get something in the mail from your church signed by the entire team, and usually it's just something like, "Hey, we prayed for you today. Understand, you just had surgery. Whatever. Hope you heal up quickly." It's usually a pretty benign sort of thing, like just oh wow. But it is something very memorable. It doesn't matter how old you are. That is something that really resonates. It's a sticky factor with the church. So those intentional connection points are important. I will say it's easier for me to text the younger generation something than it is the older generations. So I might use a phone call with someone who's 78 years old, just knowing that probably means a little more to them. Same issue, but apply it now to somebody who's 25. I might text the 25-year-old and say something in the text like, "I'm available to talk if you want to talk about this. Just ring me up. I'm available." Same issue, different approaches based on generations. The point that you made, I think, is the real point. Those intentional weekly connection points will help with attendance frequency issues.
Absolutely. And it'll keep morale high among your church body. Absolutely. I had a boomer recently. I sent a handwritten card, and he said, "I can't remember the last time I got a handwritten card." He was very grateful for that.
Yeah. You want your church members' morale high. You just don't want your church members high.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
We know you're vaping, but what are you vaping there? Anyway, vaping's bad for you kids. Don't do it. Don't do it. Hey,
Sam, real quick, funny story. We recently had a clogged toilet that we could not get unclogged. We had to call in the big guns, and it was a vape box that had been shoved down that toilet. So we're reaching all kinds of people at our church.
Oh man, yeah, I've caught some. Let me just say, younger people in the bathroom. I'm not going to get into any more details.
There was a perfectly good trash can right next to the toilet. We don't know why they threw it in the toilet.
There may be any number of reasons why, Matt. Any number of reasons, but yeah, it's a thing now. Don't vape; it's bad for you.
Don't vape.
Okay, so I want to change gears a little bit here, and I want to talk about generational outreach, because we just did something at West Bradenton. We hired Brown Church Development Group. We just brought them on. Excited they're going to start doing our master planning process, and there are two priorities with Brown. I've told them, I want you to solve our parking problem because we don't have enough spaces, and 2, we need to update our children's area. So people get a little I can understand why people get a little tense when you talk about targeting certain demographics for outreach. Like I understand the pushback. No, we are a church for everyone. Doesn't matter background or age, whoever you are, we're going to reach you for Jesus. Totally get that. But you still have to be strategic about where you put your resources, how you spend your money, what part of the building you're going to renovate, how are you going to reach the next generation or young families, which is the question we're asking. And thankfully, our older folks are asking the same question. Our older folks are not saying, hey, focus on us. Our older folks are actually saying, well, let's help you reach the next generation. I've got a really good church with that and very blessed that they understand what needs to happen. But I do think that there is something to age segmented ministries, and also to some degree live stage or age segmented outreach. What say you?
Yeah, I agree with that. And to that point, we're doing a great job in our church reaching the generation of those who are particularly excited about outreach. And so we see, for example, we have a senior adult mobile home park in our community. And I jokingly say that is our second church campus, even though we don't meet there. But so many of those people have started coming to our church as a result of some people who are excited about reaching their peers. And what I'm learning through that is the way you reach a retired or a seasonal resident in our area is totally different than the way you might reach a young person or a young family in our community. So I agree with that 100%. The motivation should be the same, but the methodology will be different depending upon the age.
I like that. Motivation the same, methodology different. That's good. I might use that in my next stewardship meeting when we're allocating resources. So we have a second campus. It's a small venue. It's this of all we have 5 services, 2 campuses, 3 venues. So we have 2 venues on our, I don't like to say main campus, but our 43rd Street campus. But most people say main campus because it's bigger and it was the first one. But our Southside campus is a small venue. It will never, if you pack that place out across 3 services on a Sunday morning, you're maxing out 250, 300. It's a smaller venue. And Jeff, our campus pastor, we were recently talking about these very same things, like attendance patterns, generations. What do we do? And we settled on, because he's solid Gen X. And he's like, listen, empty nesters and early retirees. He's like, I think that's the group, because he's bivocational, he's part-time. He's like, that's where I really think I can do well. And I was like, go for it, man. So are we neglecting children by not, targeting that demographic? Not really, because we've got another campus right down the road where we do children's ministry. But with the limited amount of hours that he can give our church, he has said, I'm going to focus on Gen X, which is his generation, his peers, and early retirees, like boomers, like younger boomers. And I think that's a really good strategy. We'll see if it works. We'll have to do a whole nother episode on whether all of our outreach strategies work. But what that means is that we're doing different stuff at the campus, right? So we're not investing as much at a Fall Fest, which is a big block party for kids at that campus, as we are at the 43rd Street campus. And I think sometimes that just by the nature of limited resources, limited hours, and just where you can, get people volunteering, sometimes you do need to focus on a particular generation, especially given the demographic around the church.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And also, Sam, you know this well. You've done a lot of you're like the king of demographics and psychographics and all that.
Please start calling me that. The king of demographics and psychographics.
I'm going to try to remember that. Yeah. So, even among a certain age group, you can even have differences, like, for example, among single mother homes or single parent homes versus well-established, nuclear family homes. You can have different methodologies even there. So I think the key is for us as church leaders to be aware of the differences and then be agile, to say, let's adjust based on what we've observed, based on who has been coming to our church, based on who's in our community. Just be aware and be open and be ready to adjust as necessary. And I think if we use wisdom and we have the heart of the Great Commission and we have a heart to build a healthy, unified church, I think we can adjust on the fly and also listen to people, what their needs are. And, One of the things we're trying to do in our church as we continue to try to get younger and younger is we just talked about having a wow factor in our nursery, that when parents come, they're just wowed by our care for them, by our commitment to excellence and safety and things like that. And we're just listening and adjusting as we need to.
So check out The Plateau is Real, Religion in 2024. So the data is from 2024, which is some of the latest data available. That's by Ryan Burge. Link in the show notes to that. So boomers up a little bit, slightly, 27 to 28% from 2016 to 2024. Gen X down a couple percentage points, 24% to 22. Millennials down 4%, 26 to 22. And Gen Z, the biggest drop, but from 29 to 24. So we'll see where these trends go. These are more midterm trends than long-term trends. Like, what do they tell you? I think it tells you that we've had a decent recovery from the pandemic, but that there has been some impact there. But I also think that there's more going on with these attendance trends than just, well, it was the pandemic. So you can't blame that for everything. But I tell you what you do need to do is to go check out the New Living Translation. So I had somebody come up to me after the service, brand new person, new to Christianity, doesn't own a Bible. And she was like, hey, like the Bible translation, I don't think she used that term, like the version of Bible that you use. She's like, it's easy. Like, I get it. Like I can understand it. And she's like, the only thing I've ever really tried to read was the King James. And granted, that's a fine translation, but I never really was able to understand. And this is somebody who has very limited knowledge of anything. But she's like, what is that? That's what's the New Living Translation. She's like, oh, okay. And there are Pew Bibles. They are our Pew Bibles. So I was like, here you go. In my view, it's highly accurate, but the most preachable Bible that your people will resonate with. So I love the New Living Translation. They got great Pew Bibles. You can go to Church Connect, which is the church, kind of the church resource arm of Tyndale. But more than anything, just go to newlivingtranslation.com. Pick out a Bible. Go to newlivingtranslation.com, pick out a Bible, and then get all those Pew Bibles in the New Living Translation. They're a sponsor of the show, of course, which we're very grateful for. But I have been a longtime user of the New Living, even before they were a sponsor. And that's when they signed on, I was so thrilled.
Sam, I gave a New Living Translation Bible to my mom this past week. She had an old NIV, the old version, and the cover was just torn apart. I said, Mom, let me get you a new Bible. Got her an NLT.
The NIV 84 was a solid translation, but it exists no more. So you know what? You can't really get one. So you might as well just go get a New Living Translation. I see a lot of NIV 84 users moving over to the New Living Translation, but that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. We're certainly grateful to Tyndale for sponsoring the show. We're thankful to you for listening. We've got another episode coming up soon. We've got 2 weekly episodes now. Still the number 4 leadership podcast in the world. That's not just Christian leadership. That's all podcasts. We're thrilled to be ranked so high. The reason we are is because you tune in. We're grateful for all of our listeners. We'll see you in the next episode.